The CMO Confidential podcast is a proud member of the I Hear Everything podcast network. Looking to launch or scale your podcast? I Hear Everything delivers podcast production, growth, and monetization solutions that transform your words into profit. Ready to give your brand a voice? Then visit iheareverything.com.
Welcome to CMO Confidential, the podcast that takes you inside the drama, decisions, and choices that go with being the head of marketing. Hosted by five-time CMO Mike Linton.
Typeface helps the world's biggest brands move from business brief to fully personalized campaigns in hours, not months, with its agentic AI marketing platform. They are the first enterprise platform with agentic AI marketing workflows designed to instantly automate work that used to take weeks. With Typeface, one campaign scales into thousands of personalized experiences across ads, email, and video, while staying true to your brand. The company's AI native platform integrates seamlessly into your MarTech stack and marketing workflows and includes enterprise-grade security. Adweek named Typeface AI Company of the Year. Time Magazine featured them as a best invention, and Fast Company called them the next big thing in tech. See how major brands like ASICS and Microsoft are transforming marketing with Typeface. Learn more at typeface.ai/CMO. Welcome, marketers, advertisers, and those who love them to Chief Marketing Officer Confidential. CMO Confidential is a program that takes you inside the drama, the decisions, and the politics that go with being the head of marketing at any company in what is one of the most scrutinized jobs in the executive suite. I'm Mike Linton, the former Chief Marketing Officer of Best Buy, eBay, Farmers Insurance, and Ancestry.com. And I'm here today with my guest, Dr. Dan McCarthy. Today's topic, the unfairness and disparate impact of privacy policy. Now, Dan is a professor at the University of Maryland, which the business school is in his background right now, if you're watching us on video. Previously, he was an assistant marketing professor at Emory University, where he created what may be the first customer lifetime value course. His specialty is the application of statistical methodology to contemporary marketing problems. He has been one of our most popular guests in spite of all the titles we have put with him over the past few years of the show. So it's great to have him back to discuss his latest research. Welcome, Dan.
Yeah, it's great to be back. And it's a fun topic. So yeah, excited to dive into it.
It's a lot more fun than it sounds. And let's discuss this research, which was titled Evaluating the Impact of Privacy Regulation on E-commerce Firms, Evidence from Apple's App Tracking Transparency. Now, I know this is a lot more exciting than it sounds, and I can probably hook you up with some marketing creative folks for your next research title. But for now, let's just tell our listeners what this is all about.
Yeah, so the basic story is that as a lot of you may be familiar, a lot of people have not been happy with how they feel they've been tracked, and they kind of talk to their friends. Next thing they know, they see a Google ad about that thing, even though they're like, I never even went on the web about that thing. How are they collecting this data on me? And what Apple had done with one of their previous iOS updates was they instituted this app tracking transparency policy. And all that means is you download a new app, the Nike Run Club app, and you open it up, and the first question that it asks is, do you want this app to track you across devices, et cetera? And 80-90% of people, they have no idea really what exactly that means, but they say, well, this kind of sounds like something that's bad. I don't want that to happen to me. So they ask app not to track. And
Right.
And all that means to a company like Nike is that before, if you're kind of scrolling through your Facebook feed, you see that new pair of, Nike Vaporflies, you click through on the link. Well, now suddenly you're not on Facebook anymore. And if the person then made a purchase at the Nike website, Previously, Nike would have known that the Facebook ad is what caused that conversion to occur. But now we don't have that identifier anymore. So you might make that purchase, but now Nike won't know that it came from the Facebook ad. So that's really the big thing. They call it this IDFA. You know, it's this kind of, it's basically a customer ID, but the customer ID was shared, kind of across all the different domains that people would go to. And so companies like Facebook, they kind of rely on these ads for, for their ad revenue.
Right.
They kind of took a big hit because now they can't really, say definitively this ad caused this or that to occur. So it's like a big source of data that effectively went away for them.
And when did this get put in? And I'm thinking back, like if I look for like, if I'm cooking and I need a new pan, I look in there and I look for the pan, and then suddenly I get like 10,000 ads for pans or pots. Um, Tell me, like, when did this come in, and then what was it? Like, how did the ads get served beforehand, if
Yes,
anything
a good
changed?
question. It was so this policy went into place in kind of late April 2021.
Yep.
But interestingly, like some of the other iOS updates, they kind of slow roll it at the beginning. Yes, they don't kind of push people aggressively to do the update, but it was kind of in June where they started to really nudge people to update to the new iOS. I think it was 14.5, and so it was really at that point that it went into effect. So yeah, so before there was this little kind of meta pixel, that was kind of put on Nike's website. And so Nike, Adidas, Puma, just kind of all of these different advertisers. And that's really what allowed Meta to know, oh, this person came from a Facebook ad, and that kind of was all that info about the purchases that happened on Nike's website. It was all being then sent back to Meta so that Meta could say, well, this customer made this purchase at Nike on this day. And I know that they also, that same person, using that same identifier, did all of this other stuff on these other websites on these other days. So it's really kind of this unified identifier that Meta had, that allowed it to basically serve up more effective ads for all of the people who wanted to advertise on Meta.
So this has blown up attribution. And this is only iOS, right? Did everyone else have to do this too, or it's just iOS?
Just iOS. And that kind of is one of the other big things. So you have, everyone's heard of GDPR, you've heard of CCPA.
Why don't you tell everybody what those mean, just because everybody might not know?
Those are basically other kind of government instituted privacy initiatives. So, you know, in Europe, they institute GDPR. Now all these companies have to effectively do other things to be more privacy compliant. Um, you know, Apple's ATT is kind of an example of what they call self-regulation,
Yeah.
where it's kind of the companies themselves that are instituting these privacy policies. And in some sense, it's a really good setting for an academic paper like ours because Apple, they had full control and kind of it applied to everybody all at the same time, and so it made for a pretty clean analysis. But because it was only Apple, they did it on the iOS device, but it's not like, Android devices would have been subject to the same thing,
Right.
or desktop devices. It really was just the iOS devices that were directly affected. So yeah, I think that there are kind of spillovers that were happening. Like a lot of people, they get a lot of info about their audience, who they should be targeting. Like what is my best audience from that sort of uh, metadata. And so when
Right.
that went away, it would also reduce the effectiveness of your Android spending and your desktop spending because suddenly you just have a less good view of how good your base is. But yeah, the direct effects were strictly with iOS.
So we're going to go in the direct effects in a minute. Just a reminder to our listeners, ATT is not the phone company. It is App Tracking Transparency. So when we shorthand it and talk about ATT, where it is about app tracking transparency. And you kind of talked about why you wanted to research this, but there's an economic and consumer and marketing and financial story behind this research, right? You were like, hey, how's this going to affect everybody? I think that's it.
Here is a word from our sponsor, Typeface.
To orchestrate workflows across channels, meet ARC agents, your AI teammates handling complexity so you can focus on what matters. All within a reimagined workspace where you and AI create as one. Spaces works the way you do. Create anything, from documents to videos to entire campaigns, at scale. Our agents help you craft campaign storyboards, powered by your Brand Hub, giving you the perfect starting point. Transform one asset into countless variations for every audience and market. Join industry leaders already reimagining their content lifecycle with Typeface. Welcome to marketing's next chapter, where every story finds its voice.
Now back to our discussion with University of Maryland professor Dan McCarthy.
Yeah, and kind of this speaks to some of our previous interviews. I'm all about like the big company effects. Yeah, I think it's an area that I'm really excited about. And you look at a lot of the other literature, and it's just not about like what effect did this have on companies that are advertising at the company level? Did it hurt their revenue? Did it help their revenue? And so that was really the focus that we had kind of brought to this paper. It was to say, well, it has these effects on consumers. It might have other effects, but what companies really care about is they did this, privacy thing. How did it hurt my revenue?
Right.
That's where the pedal hits the metal.
Well, and
So
this is the thing. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show talking about this is you look at this and you think, oh, it's just a privacy thing. You don't think about the financial impact or the targeting impact or or your ability to read results impact on it. You think, oh, it's just one more thing I have to do. And what you're saying is this is actually blowing up a lot of the attribution in the funnel, if I'm reading it right.
yeah, so it means the amount that you spend on your marketing, you're going to get less revenue for that spending. And that means for the same amount of marketing budget, your revenue is going to go down.
So let's talk about, you said they slow rolled it. Let's talk about how it rolled out and then any specifics you saw in what happened. And then we'll talk about the disparate impact on businesses.
Yeah, so what we found was that the click-through rate on the click-through rate effectively got 37% worse after ATT went into effect. So, you spend your money on those Facebook ads, 37% fewer people are clicking through, so that would kind of translate into, that many fewer purchases, assume.
And also this will make your CAC go up, your customer acquisition cost explode, right? For the same
Exactly.
amount of money,
Hmm.
you're getting a lot less click through. So by definition, your CAC is rising, right?
Yep. And so then the big question is, all right, imagine that you're one of these companies, you say, oh, shoot,
We're
this,
getting so worse at marketing right now. Like our CAC has declined by a huge amount.
yep.
And gosh, this stuff is so much more expensive to buy. You were just going into that. I didn't mean to jump the question on you, but you were going to explain like
Yes, it's,
X ramification.
kind of the other thing that the firm might be thinking then is no one's putting a gun to this company's head to say you have to spend this much amount of money on Facebook ads.
Yeah,
If the effectiveness goes down a lot, you would think they'd reallocate a bunch of budget away from Facebook to other channels.
right.
And I think that's much easier to do if you're a Nike, because you have all these channels, you've got a very well built out and diverse marketing function. But if you're a direct to consumer brand, a lot of them, they only invest in like Facebook and Google. That's kind of like the main. And so effectively what we found was there was some amount of kind of reallocation of marketing budget away from Facebook, um, but it wasn't very much. So Yeah, so maybe just to take a step back, there's kind of like two data sets that we had.
Yeah, let's go over the data sets and then talk about the Facebook, all the different ways you could do this, and then why direct to consumer companies used Facebook so much.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, so the two data sets, one is the advertising data set. And it was kind of this I'll show you mine if you show me yours data co-op type model.
yeah,
Yeah, so companies they would supply, this is how much we spent on all of our different channels over time.
yeah,
And if you provide that data to this company, then the company will also provide you aggregated insights about all of the other companies that they're tracking. So they have thousands of companies in this data set. And so we can directly observe from the companies themselves. They spent this much on Facebook, this much on Google, this much on TikTok, etc. And we had that before until after ATT, so we can just empirically observe like how did the budget allocation change. And then we had this second data set that gave us really nice insight into the revenue impacts. And it was this company called Grips Intelligence. I don't know
yeah.
if you've heard of them before, but super data, again, thousands of websites, thousands of companies that they track. And for each of those companies, they can see how much revenue, how many clicks, how many visits to the site. They can also see, um, the source of purchases. So did these purchases come from Facebook? Did they come from other sources? Um, and they can see the device that was used to make the purchase. So if someone was on their iOS device and they made a purchase on that device, then Grips would directly observe that in their data. Yeah, effectively, through Grips, we could see all the data that companies would make available in their Google Analytics pages.
And this
So
is how you get to the minus 37, right?
exactly, yeah. So
Okay, and then so e- e- tell me why the direct to consumer smaller, I think it's mostly smaller companies too, lean so heavily on Facebook and not other channels.
it was easy to use and it was relatively, quite effective. It was also a pretty deep channel, so you could put a whole bunch of money in it and it wouldn't get kind of capacity constrained. So yeah, so a lot of companies that had kind of great success, especially these direct to consumer companies like, Warby Parker back in the early days and
Yeah.
all those different Shopify businesses that sell, this wide range of doodads. They would all, pretty heavily rely on Facebook ads. And there was really good tracking of the effectiveness of that channel. So they could know I put in this amount of money, this is how much revenue I got back for that spending. And so they could very easily see, we seem to be doing pretty well in this channel. So yeah, so it's a channel that they leaned on very, very heavily for demand generation.
And so I think this is super interesting because suddenly you are driving all this marketing, you have a really clear view of your acquisition, a really clear ROI look, and suddenly this privacy thing rolls out, actually probably slowly over time. So it's not like you hit a CAC cliff. You probably are, your CAC is decreasing as the adoption goes, and then boom, suddenly on, and if the average is 37, I'm sure there's a bunch of people that just completely fell off the cliff. And you, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the people where it completely fell off the cliff were, well, so there's the effectiveness of that form of advertising, and then there's like the downstream consequence for revenue. The downstream consequence for revenue was like super bad for the smaller companies. They were the ones who took almost all of the hit. Yeah, so one thing that we had done was we said, imagine that we kind of rank sorted all the companies that we're tracking
Yeah.
and then just get like that middle 50% customer. Um, the ones bigger are the big companies, the ones that are smaller are the smaller companies. So just kind of split it up by the median in that way. The big companies actually were unaffected by ATT.
Because I can move all my money to anywhere. And I have practice with all those other channels as well. But if I'm
Mhm.
a little company, I only have practice with one channel. I'm kind of, this is why you think it's really unfair, right?
Yeah. So for the small companies, so for the overall average, the impact on revenue was again about 37%. Although it depends on exactly how you do the measurement.
Yeah.
But for the smaller companies, it was like north of 60%. Yeah, so they got thwacked. So yeah, so this was very tough for them.
And are the little companies recovering, or did this put just a lot of them out of business?
I think a bunch of them likely went out of business. Now, I would say that you hear 60+% revenue decline. I should kind of clarify it's like a relative revenue decline.
Right.
You were
It's within the channel, right? It's only the part you can see. Yeah.
Well, so it's actually overall revenue for these companies, but it's
Yeah.
kind of like relative to other companies that did not
I
have
got it.
high exposure to the Facebook ads. So what we effectively found was, um, if you were primarily investing like Google and these other marketing channels, your revenue kind of continued to kind of move up. The companies that invested very heavily, they were very, very reliant on the Facebook ads. The revenue had been going up before ATT, and then it kind of went flat. And so it wasn't like the revenue fell by 60%. That would be, I mean, that'd be that'd
That'd
be
be catastrophic. You'd be, yes, you're pushing. Hey, I have a question. So when stuff like this gets done, how come your research is not done in advance, or how come like Apple or the government or whoever putting this in doesn't think about this kind of research done in advance to see what would happen? Why is it after the fact?
well, from a researcher standpoint, now that the dust has settled, we've seen multiple years kind of post implementation of ATT. That gives us like really good data to be able to say, oof, this had this effect, and we can kind of do all these different analyses. Imagine that it was, imagine that it was kind of like April 1st, 2021, like right before they were planning to roll it out.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have had any data, to
Yeah.
directly observe, to be able to see the effects. So, so I'd say, now that we have a paper like this that's out there, one could imagine if another privacy initiative was being contemplated, they should certainly look to papers like ours for guidance. Like, wow, this might hurt small firms.
Let's talk about what marketers around the world should be thinking about this, particularly if they're with smaller companies or Facebook heavy. You got also AI creating a lot of zero-click search. So maybe some of your Google search is declining as well, or maybe more expensive. What advice do you have for the brands looking down the barrel at, gosh, this attribution is getting harder and harder?
Yeah, I'd say, for one, you want to make sure each of these, kind of key quantities that I talk about a lot, CAC, customer lifetime value, you name it. They're all channel specific, and they're all evolving over time. They're changing. And I'd say that this kind of further reiterates the importance of first having channel specific metrics. So it's not just how much am I spending on marketing, what is my overall blended CAC, but you really want to break it down channel by channel. And then the second big thing is, as we've seen with this example, your CAC today is going to be different from your CAC a year from now. And so you really want to be paying very close attention to how these figures are tracking over time. The same goes for customer lifetime value. So I'd say, one of the other implications uh, of of these privacy measures is that you're not going to be as effective at getting exactly who you might have wanted to acquire. And so it could mean now that you kind of have more of a spray and pray type of acquisition approach. You might bring in a different type of customer than you did before. And so it really pays to be tracking, post-acquisition value and CAC, in a channel specific way over time.
And I hear in your comment there also, if you are averaging CAC across all your channels and you're averaging customers across all your channels, you will be lost in this world. I used to have a saying, averaging is killing us. And I think
Mhm.
that's what you just said here.
Yeah, you're leaving so much money on the table. You wouldn't be able to see, oh, this channel's doing like really well, and this other one seems to be, doing terribly. I think
Yeah.
that sort of insight it all gets glossed over into the average. And so, yes, again, Theta, my company, that's kind of what we do, day to
Yeah.
day. But even though this was not a CLV paper, it really kind of highlighted the importance of having those sorts of metrics and tracking them religiously. I think that effectively what it all boils down to is, different channels have different returns on investment at different points in time. And if you're an investor or you're a company marketing manager, the key is you want to be making as much money as you can. You want the highest return that you can. And so if you have CAC and you have post-acquisition value, that gives you the basis for the ROI calculation. So just you really want to make sure that you're kind of doing all of your investing in the most intelligent way. And having kind of the most up-to-date granular numbers is what, really makes that possible.
Yes, another reason to not average your marketing results. I want to go back because you mentioned, the pellet we did the rise and our first show with you, the rise and fall of Peloton has seen through the lens of CLTV. We talked about DoorDash and subscription models. Um, you know, what has transpired in those pieces of research, if anything, that is new and newsworthy to our listeners?
Good question. So Peloton continuing to tread water big time.
Yeah.
So I think they're all the things that we talked about. I think they've kind of continued to hold, and it doesn't seem like the company has yet been able to really crack that. I know that they've brought in new leadership, so it's going to be interesting to see whether they're able to do something that the previous leadership was not able to do. Um, but I would say I was kind of optimistic that Barry McCarthy, not just because he shares my name, but because of his, his really good track record. Like if
Yeah, look, he
anybody,
had a great subscription model track record.
yeah,
So
I mean Netflix, Spotify, CFO. I mean this guy, he is solid.
yeah.
So I won't say that he kind of exited with his tail between his legs, but they're still sucking wind big time.
Well,
So
and they've rolled through a couple CMOs, I believe, as well.
I
So
know,
I think
yeah.
it's probably a tough model to make money on. How about, we talked about the power of subscription models for not just the company, but also the category.
Mm.
Any updates on that, or is that just still
Yeah.
rock solid?
Actually, we just had a big update on that paper just a week or two ago, and in fact, a lot of the things that we added to the paper were things that we talked about, Mike. So I was kind of thinking of you as we were putting it together.
If you want
But
to credit me in one of your papers, I would love to be credited in an academic paper, and we would love to have CMO Confidential called out in
yeah,
the paper.
we'll
So
put it in the acknowledgement section.
there we
But yeah,
go.
I think one of the things that we talked about was when a category matures, do the effects change? If you're the last one in to create a subscription program, what does that mean? And I'd say one of the things that we found, so we really did a deeper dive into kind of how things were different when Postmates launched their subscription versus when DoorDash launched their subscription. And the good thing about DoorDash was when they launched Dash Pass, Postmates Unlimited had been in the market for a while. And so you have some people that are signing up for Dash Pass for the very first time, but you had some people who they signed up for Dash Pass, but they actually previously had a Postmates Unlimited subscription and then they canceled it. And
Yeah.
so, you've got these people who've got kind of varying degrees of prior experience with these delivery subscriptions. Um, and what we found was the people who had prior experience with a competing subscription, you still saw a big bump. They were spending a lot more at DoorDash, but there was um, there was no category expansion. So I think there tends to be, if you sign up for a subscription like this for the very first time, there's like a novelty effect.
Yeah.
That, oh, I've got Uber One right now. I got to use this thing
Yeah,
all the time.
you gotta get a lot of food delivered. Um,
Yeah. So you see this big increase in restaurant delivery spending, not only with Uber, but with Uber Eats, but just in the category as a whole. Um, when you're on your like third, or fourth subscription, you kind of know what you're doing. So you're like, I've got this amount of spending I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, and you can do arbitrage and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, it becomes more strategic. So you still will spend more at the company that you have the subscription with, but you're not gonna, you don't have that, honeymoon effect of just going bonanzas in the category. It's gonna be, I've got $100 to spend, for the next couple weeks. I'm just gonna reallocate more of that towards this company where I get free delivery from now. So yeah, so that was really interesting. And there's two other things I thought are just super cool. So I'm really I don't know that I've ever been so excited about a revision. Um, but yeah,
It's
and
palpable. It's coming right over the Zoom, Dan.
it's either that
Uh,
or the coffee that I had before. Um, the second thing that was really neat was you sign up for Dash Pass,
yeah.
you cancel Dash Pass. Now suddenly, yeah, there's no, you're not getting a monetary benefit for placing orders at Dash Pass anymore. But what we found was um, after you cancel, those people still subsequently spent significantly more at DoorDash than the people who never had a subscription to begin with. And so it has this kind of long lasting effect that even extends beyond like the duration of the subscription itself. So, yeah, I think a lot of people, when they think about, am I making money on my subscription? Typically they'll say, well, how long did the people stay and how did the spending change while they were subscribed? But here what we're saying is, well, you want to go even further than that, you
Yeah,
know?
that's what you're saying is the subscription has brand power,
Yeah.
even after it's gone.
And that's
Uh,
exactly the sort of thing you want, that it doesn't even need to be there anymore. And they're still, their behavior has changed.
yeah, you can raise the price, and when people disappear, you can still maybe get some of the benefit. So that's interesting. I have to ask before we get to our traditional last question. You also wrote a piece called "Everyone is Cheating Their Way Through College." Um, Tell me about. I'm sure that's AI based, but tell me about it.
Well,
And
certainly, I
as a
didn't write that
fellow
article.
professor, not
Yeah,
even close to your league, but I want to hear this.
I didn't write that. Well, so I didn't write that piece, but I was commenting on that piece.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do think that, we're kind of entering this weird era where, students have just super easy availability to, to these LLMs. And these LLMs are now they're very smart.
yeah,
So, Ethan Mollick, he's this Wharton professor that's done a lot of great work in the space. Um, and he's shown how a lot of case studies now, if you go to the discussion questions at the end, these LLMs will do a better job of answering those questions than than the students would.
yeah.
So they can kind of crack the case. Um, so it's kind of changed the game for how we evaluate students. That you can ask them to answer a certain question, and if they could just feed it through the LLM and get the right answer, did they actually learn? And I think that a lot of professors, um, we should be changing how we evaluate. We should be changing our homeworks and our exams to kind of accommodate to account for the fact that it's now just much easier for people to kind of look to these LLMs. But people get busy. They don't want to change all of their homework, and so there could be this inertial effect, and we have to change, because
Yeah,
otherwise,
because you're not going to teach them to think, uh, which is probably the biggest job, right?
yeah. I mean, that's if the goal is to get students to learn, then they won't be learning. They'll get the right answers, but they won't have learned anything. So I think, I'll often say you're learning when you're kind of struggling with something. And obviously, you don't want to struggle for struggle's sake, but yeah, I would say that the learning is in the struggle.
Well, and let's go to the giant gap this will cause when you get to a real job where they don't give you a project where they already know the answer. They give you
Mhm.
a project where there is no answer. And if you're not trained on how to get that answer and struggle through everything you're talking about, you are going to probably be terrible at that job. At least that would be my take from
Yep.
a business perspective.
But it does also then speak to, what sorts of classes and experiences are going to be most useful for the students in school. And I think, a lot of people will talk about experiential learning, and it's always been useful, but yeah, I think experiential learning is now much more useful in a post LLM world because there it's like go to town, use the LLMs. We're not going to try
Yeah.
and stop you. Do whatever you need to do to make a good like new product or whatever it is that they're kind of having as um, the focus of that experience. And so I think that's exactly the sort of thing that it's always valuable, but it's also like not GPT-able. So
Yeah, yeah. Because that's what's going to be in the real world. I think that's a great way to get us to our last question, which you are very familiar with. Practical advice for our audience we haven't discussed yet, and or the funniest story you can share on the air. You have to pick one or both of those, but you must pick at least one.
practical advice. I would say, and this goes back to that subscription paper.
Yeah,
We found with this Postmates Unlimited subscription, the big concern was these people, they're signing up for a subscription because they know, 2 months from now, they're all going to have babies. And so it's not the subscription that caused them to spend more, it's the fact that they're going to have babies.
yeah,
And so that's kind of a potential concern that all these people, they're just super rational, forward-looking actors. And that absolutely, there's some effect that will have. But what we found was that people are quite irrational with these subscriptions. That here you know exactly what you're going to get. You get free delivery, and you pay $10 a month. And that's it. There's no other intangible benefits of having a subscription. So if you're making less than like 3 orders a month, you've lost money on the subscription. So you
yeah,
think, all right, I'm only going to keep this thing if I'm making money on this thing. And it's like, no, 80% of people lost money on their subscription. And the longer that they held the subscription, the longer that they had consecutive losses. There were a bunch of people that had they went 6 for 6 every single month for 6 months, losing money.
yeah,
And they still have they actually have a higher likelihood of keeping their subscription than the average person at the onset of signing up for the subscription. And so it's not that every single person's losing money, but most of them are. And um, so in terms of practical advice, look at your subscriptions, look at your order history. Like, are you making money on this or not? And you might want to take a closer eye to that because if you're like the average person, you might be losing money on your subscription.
that's predictably irrational. So I think a great way to end the show. Thank you, Dan, for joining us once again. We will keep our eyes peeled for more research. And thanks to everyone for listening to CMO Confidential. If you're enjoying the show, hit the like button and subscribe. Look for all of our shows on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, which include the Warby Parker case. I can see clearly now through my CLTV glasses. The Budweiser case, how not to manage a socio-political issue. The Insomnia Cookies case and Northwestern's ghost model, and managing the gray area, the fine line between marketing and lying. And of course, all of Dan's earlier shows. Hey, all you marketers, stay safe out there. This is Mike Linton signing off for CMO Confidential. Typeface helps the world's biggest brands move from business brief to fully personalized campaigns in hours, not months, with its agentic AI marketing platform. They are the first enterprise platform with agentic AI marketing workflows designed to instantly automate work that used to take weeks. With Typeface, one campaign scales into thousands of personalized experiences across ads, email, and video while staying true to your brand. The company's AI native platform integrates seamlessly into your MarTech stack and marketing workflows and includes enterprise grade security. Adweek named Typeface AI Company of the Year. Time Magazine featured them as a best invention, and Fast Company called them the next big thing in tech. See how major brands like ASICS and Microsoft are transforming marketing with Typeface. Learn more at typeface.ai/CMO.